Imagine spending 15 years relentlessly building a 4.8-star business in your local community. You pour your life into it. You earn the trust of thousands of neighbors, only to watch that pristine reputation just burn to the ground in a single afternoon.
Oh, yeah. It's a nightmare scenario.
Right. And the spark that starts the fire isn't like a bad business strategy or a market crash. It's literally just one of your technicians driving a company truck recklessly through a school zone or, leaving muddy boots on a customer's white carpet.
The asymmetry there is just terrifying for any founder. I mean, decades of compounding goodwill can be utterly erased by just one bad interaction on a random Tuesday morning.
Exactly.
And the vulnerability isn't at the corporate level. It's hidden in these everyday foundational processes that happen long before a customer ever even picks up the phone.
Welcome to today's Deep Dive. Our mission for you today is exploring how a sterling, long-standing reputation can be ruthlessly protected or completely destroyed by a single, often overlooked mechanism.
Your hiring process.
Yeah, your hiring process. We have a really illuminating blend of sources for you today. We're starting with a high-level 2026 Federated Insurance Guide titled Manage Your Reputation with Smart Hiring Practices.
Which is a great theoretical foundation.
It is, but we are pairing that corporate theory with something incredibly gritty. We've got the actual internal HR playbook of a small business called Hartzell's Heat and Air.
Operating out of Kingfisher, Oklahoma, right?
Yes, Kingfisher.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this because the stakes here are intensely high for the business in our source material. Hartzell's currently sits at a 4.8-star rating across 271 Google reviews.
That is no small feat in residential field service.
Not at all. That metric represents over 15 years of consistent, high-quality work across Kingfisher, Canadian, and Garfield counties. Every single one of those stars is a customer who was moved enough by their experience to actually go online and broadcast it.
Right.
But if one bad hire gets sent into a home, the resulting cluster of negative reviews, that can take months of flawless, backbreaking work to offset.
Which establishes the core thesis of our entire exploration today. Smart hiring is not just administrative HR bureaucracy.
Like filing tax forms and stuff.
Exactly. It's not about checking compliance boxes. Hiring is frontline reputation management. When a homeowner opens their front door, they do not see the abstract concept of a 15-year-old company.
They just see the guy standing there.
They see the one individual standing on their porch. That specific technician is a walking, talking, breathing extension of the brand.
So if hiring actually is reputation management, then defending those 4.8 stars has to begin way before a candidate ever applies for the job.
Long before.
Right. So how do you actually attract the people capable of upholding that standard?
Yes.
According to Hartzell's playbook, you achieve this by being brutally, almost uncomfortably honest about the reality of the work.
It's a really stark contrast to the standard advice. I mean, the Federated Insurance Guide advises businesses to clearly outline job qualifications, responsibilities, work hours.
Which is, standard, almost cliche advice.
Yeah, very standard. But Hartzell's translates this into gritty reality on their career pages for roles like experienced tech, installer, apprentice, and internship. They completely refuse to sugarcoat what these roles entail.
They strip away all the corporate gloss. I mean, they explicitly advertise the physical brutality of the job.
Oh, yeah.
The posting spells out that being an HVAC tech in Oklahoma means working in attics in the dead of summer where temperatures routinely exceed 130 degrees.
130 degrees. Just let that sink in.
That's wild. And they mandate on-call weekend availability. They describe crawling in heat, dark, confined spaces while simultaneously dealing with the pressure of explaining complex diagnostic findings to a homeowner who is, let's be real, probably sweating and frustrated.
What's fascinating here is the underlying psychology of what recruiters call self-qualifying.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, if you write a vague, generic job description, you attract candidates who fill in the blanks with their own optimistic assumptions. Someone sees the word technician, and they might imagine a relatively stable, climate-controlled environment.
Maybe turning a few wrenches at a leisurely pace, right?
Exactly. And when the reality of that 130-degree attic hits them in mid-July, or when their first mandatory on-call weekend totally ruins their family plans, they're going to quit.
Yeah, and they might quit mid-shift.
Which leaves the customer sweltering and your reputation in tatters.
I see the logic. I really do. But I have to push back on this strategy from a sheer numbers perspective.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't the traditional goal of a job posting to cast the widest net possible? Like, you want to attract a massive pool of applicants, and then you use the interview process to filter them out.
That's the conventional wisdom, yeah.
Right. This Hartzell's approach sounds like putting up a dating profile, where you list all of your absolute worst, most toxic red flags on the very first line. I mean, is actively scaring people away actually a viable way to build a company?
It is when retention is your primary metric for success. By placing the most grueling aspects of the job right up front, you ensure the only people who click apply are the ones whose expectations already match your reality.
Oh, so the owner doesn't have to waste time filtering them.
Exactly. They filter themselves out. And it's crucial to note they are equally transparent about the rewards, too. They outline the aggressive pay structure. They detail the exact growth path from apprentice to senior tech.
And they mentioned providing comprehensive HR benefits through Insperity,
Yes.
which, for those of us not in the business world, Insperity is what's called a professional employer organization. Basically, it's a service that allows a small local shop to outsource their HR and offer the kind of heavyweight benefits like paid vacation that usually only massive Fortune 500 companies can afford.
It's a huge draw for the right candidate.
Definitely. Plus, they outline commissions on things like PMAs and JB warranties.
We should probably define those too, because they're vital to the business model. A PMA is a preventative maintenance agreement, essentially a recurring subscription for your AC.
Got it.
And JB warranties are third-party extended labor warranties. Selling these provides the business with crucial recurring revenue, but it requires a technician who is invested enough to actually learn a delicate sales touch.
Right.
So the transparency of the job posting attracts candidates who are thinking long-term about a career rather than someone just looking for a temporary paycheck to tide them over.
But, here is the flaw in relying entirely on that brutal honesty.
Yeah.
You might successfully attract a candidate who isn't scared of a 130-degree attic.
Sure.
They read the anti-sales pitch, they embrace the physical grind, and they show up ready to work. But sheer physical endurance doesn't translate into a 5-star review.
Not at all.
You can be the toughest person in Oklahoma, but if your toughness makes you brusque, impatient, or rude to the customer, the reputation still tanks.
That perfectly bridges the gap between physical qualifications and behavioral qualifications. Once you verify they can handle the heat, you have to figure out what happens when they actually open their mouth in front of a customer.
Right, the actual interaction.
Yeah, and the source material outlines the owner's Dave's non-negotiable values, and they are fiercely, unapologetically customer-centric.
These rules are ironclad. Zero upselling of unnecessary parts.
Yeah.
Absolute respect for the customer's home, and they define that respect tangibly, right?
Tangibly.
Like using drop claws every single time, wearing shoe covers, cleaning up the work area, and treating the space like it's your grandmother's house.
Yeah.
And obviously showing up precisely on time.
In a high-volume service business where technicians are running, 5 or 6 calls a day, time is always running out.
Yeah, they're always rushing.
Dropping a cloth or cleaning up dust takes an extra 10 minutes. Those are the exact corners that an undisciplined, purely physically driven technician will cut just to get home earlier.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. To figure out if a candidate will actually uphold these values, the playbook outlines a specific hypothetical test during the screening process.
The 70-year-old homeowner test.
Yes. The premise is simple, but so revealing. Can the candidate explain a complex mechanical issue like a nuanced refrigerant charge problem to a 70-year-old homeowner in Kingfisher without making them feel stupid or talked down to?
It's an absolutely phenomenal metric for empathy.
It is, because the technician has to act almost like a piece of translation software. They are the human API interface between a highly complex pressurized refrigerant system and a homeowner who just knows they are hot and uncomfortable.
That's a great way to put it.
And if that translation fails, if the technician is condescending or uses too much jargon, the customer feels belittled. You could flawlessly fix the AC, but if you make the customer feel foolish, you are not getting a 5-star review.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a fundamental truth about hiring in literally any industry. Technical skills can be taught. You can take an apprentice and teach them how to read a manifold gauge, wire a thermostat, or braze a copper pipe. But behavioral traits, deeply ingrained attitudes and communication styles.
It's like changing those.
Exactly. Those are incredibly difficult and sometimes totally impossible to rewire in an adult.
You cannot send an employee to a weekend seminar to learn how to have genuine empathy for a confused, frustrated customer.
Which is exactly why the playbook shifts away from technical quizzing and relies heavily on behavioral interview questions.
Right.
Instead of asking a candidate to recite the wiring diagram of a heat pump, Dave asks them, "Tell me about a time you found an unexpected, costly problem on a past job. What did you actually do?"
Because that forces the candidate to reveal their instinct. When nobody was looking, did they hide the mistake? Did they try to aggressively upcharge the customer to cover their tracks?
Or did they pause, go find the homeowner, and communicate the bad news honestly?
Yeah. A technical certification hanging on a wall only reveals what a candidate knows. How they answer a behavioral question reveals who they actually are under pressure.
Exactly.
I want you, listening to this right now, to apply this to your own daily life. Think about your own profession, whether you are a software engineer, a graphic designer, or a financial analyst. How well do you explain your complex daily work to someone entirely outside your industry?
It's tougher than people think.
It really is. When you pitch a project to a client or even explain your day to a family member, are you educating them or are you alienating them behind a wall of jargon? Because that exact communication gap is where trust is either built or completely destroyed, no matter what field you're in.
It is the defining line between a one-off transaction and a long-term relationship. And for a local business operating in specific counties, recurring relationships are the entire economic engine.
So let's say your candidate is doing great. They smile, they ace the 70-year-old homeowner test. They say all the right things about treating the property like their grandmother's house.
Sounds perfect.
Right. But it's incredibly easy for someone to play the part of the perfect employee for a 45-minute interview. To truly protect a 15-year reputation, you cannot rely on their word. You have to look into their past to verify those claims.
Which brings us to the vetting process.
Yeah.
It's the most uncomfortable part of hiring, but absolutely critical. The Federated Insurance Guide stresses the importance of checking references and backgrounds, and Hartzell treats this not as a suggestion, but as an uncompromising mandate.
Honestly, though, I have to challenge the standard corporate advice. I mean, are we pretending people don't just list their buddies as references?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just call my friend Mike. He'll tell you I'm the hardest worker he knows. And on the employer side, aren't former managers legally terrified of saying anything negative?
Oh, absolutely they are.
They just confirm the dates of employment to avoid a lawsuit and get off the phone. Is this step actually worth the immense amount of time it takes a busy small business owner?
Many small businesses skip this exact step because it is awkward and time-consuming. But Hartzell views it as mandatory because past actions are unequivocally the most accurate predictor of future behavior.
Even with the legal fears.
Yes, because while previous employers are cautious about liability, there is a specific mechanism to cut through that fear. There's one ultimate, highly predictive question you can ask a former employer.
I was looking at this in the playbook, and I actually gasped when I read it. Because you don't ask about their technical skills. You don't ask if they were late. You literally just ask, would you rehire this person?
It cuts straight through the corporate speak and the legal anxiety. You aren't asking them to defame the candidate. You are just asking a simple yes or no question about their own hypothetical business choices.
Right.
And the secret is you aren't just listening for the word yes or no. You are listening to the cadence of their voice. You're listening for a pause, a hesitation, a hedge.
If you ask, would you rehire them? And the former manager pauses for 3 excruciating seconds before saying, yeah, I suppose if we had an opening, that tells you everything. It is a massive, glaring red flag.
Conversely, an instant, enthusiastic, in a heartbeat we miss them every single day, validates everything you saw in the interview. It's a masterclass in reading between the lines.
It really is.
And the vetting doesn't stop at reference checks. The playbook mandates strict drug screening and criminal background checks as non-negotiable hurdles.
Which, when you think about the mechanics of the job, makes perfect sense. Drug screening isn't some moral judgment passed down from management. It is a hard physical safety requirement.
Exactly.
These technicians are handling highly pressurized refrigerants, they're working with high-voltage electrical panels, and they're driving heavy branded company vehicles through residential neighborhoods filled with kids. You cannot afford a single second of impaired judgment.
The criminal background checks are equally vital because of the environment. These employees are being given unsupervised physical access to the inside of residential homes.
Yeah, that's a lot of trust.
The homeowner is trusting the Hartzell's brand, and Hartzell's is transferring that massive amount of trust directly to the technician. You cannot guess on that transfer of trust. You have to verify it.
But how does this work for the really young recruits?
Mm.
The source mentions hiring apprentices and interns.
Hmm.
If you have an 18-year-old kid straight out of high school, they don't have a former manager you can call to ask the rehire question.
The playbook adapts to that reality.
Hmm.
For new techs without a formal employment history, they require character references from people in positions of authority who have observed the candidate under pressure.
Like who?
A youth pastor, a high school football coach, a vocational teacher. The mechanism is the same. You have to establish a verified baseline of reliability from a third party.
All right, so let's track our progress. You've successfully attracted someone resilient, you've confirmed their empathy, and you've rigorously vetted their background. Yeah, they are clean, they are capable, they are ready to work. But if you just toss them the keys to a Hartzell's truck and say, good luck out there, you are still gambling your 4.8 stars.
You absolutely are.
They have to be calibrated to the specific operational rhythm of your company.
This is the final and perhaps most crucial step in the entire process, the crucible of onboarding.
Think about the mechanism of a successful restaurant franchise. The secret to their success isn't just handing a Michelin star chef a spatula and saying, cook us a burger.
Right, because that chef might make an objectively superior gourmet burger.
But if it doesn't have the exact specific sauce or the exact bun-to-meat ratio of your signature franchise burger, the customer's going to feel betrayed. The expectation of consistency was broken.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The customer expects the specific Hartzell's experience, not the individual technician's improvised rogue experience. To guarantee that consistency, Hartzell's puts every new hire through an exact onboarding crucible. Week 1 isn't about turning wrenches. It's a mandatory ride-along with Dave or senior tech. The new hire is there purely to watch the core values translated into action.
They are watching the drop clods literally hit the floor. They are watching the mechanics of how Dave patiently talks to that 70-year-old homeowner.
Furthermore, they are learning the strict operational software standards. The playbook mandates training on the Service Titan or HCP software system,
Which are huge in that industry.
Yeah, think of these platforms as the central nervous system for field service companies. It's an app on their tablet where they log every single detail of the job.
And the mechanism behind taking clean, readable job notes is fascinating. It's not just for the boss's records. When a customer calls 6 months later disputing a charge or claiming a part failed, clean notes in Service Titan are the exact mechanism that saves the relationship.
It creates a perfect paper trail.
Right. The dispatcher can pull up the file and say, I see here on October 12th, Dave noted that the secondary drain pan was heavily rusted and recommended a replacement. It proves competence, it provides a paper trail, and it diffuses the customer's anger.
They're also trained on the exact pricing psychology. They learn how to present the $99 dispatch fee and the $111 diagnostic fee.
Which, as the source notes, gets credited back to the customer if a repair is accepted within 14 days.
And we need to explain why that specific policy is so effective. It's a brilliant application of psychology. By crediting the $111 back if they accept the repair within 2 weeks, you completely lower the customer's defensive shields.
Oh, because it shifts the dynamic.
Exactly. It shifts it from a high-pressure, buy it today or else ultimatum, to empowering the customer. They feel in control of the timeline, which paradoxically makes them far more likely to trust the technician and just accept the repair immediately.
Wow, yeah.
The new hire has to learn how to present that effectively.
This raises an important question, though. You are asking a massive amount from this new employee. You are asking for grueling physical labor in a 130-degree attic, high emotional intelligence with frustrated customers, and strict choreographed adherence to software and pricing rules.
It's a lot.
How do you make an employee feel truly invested in following all of these standards instead of just, burning out?
You have to build an infrastructure that actually takes care of them as human beings. It's
Right.
not just about demanding adherence to rules. It's about providing clear, finalized HR support that makes them feel secure.
Right, going back to those benefits.
Yeah, the sources show us their incredibly current benefits package, finalized in February and March of 2026, managed through that Insperity PEO we mentioned earlier. It is professional-grade support.
Yeah.
They offer front-loaded paid vacation, meaning an employee doesn't have to grind for 3 years just to take a week off. They offer paid sick leave, a floating birthday holiday.
I noticed they even have this quirky, hyper-specific internal policy called the Timothy Rusher exception, which allows a special 40-hour vacation carryover rule.
I love that one.
Right. I love that detail because it goes to show they actually adapt to the real human beings working for them. It proves it's not a faceless corporation, but a business that listens to its team.
The entire goal of this onboarding, the ride-alongs, the software training, the generous benefits, it's all driving toward one singular metric: seamlessness.
Facelessness.
A new hire's first solo call must look completely 100% indistinguishable from a call that the owner, Dave, would run himself. If the customer cannot tell the difference between the founder of the company and the brand new guy, the onboarding was a triumph.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the whole picture, we see that a business like Hartzell's doesn't maintain a stellar 4.8-star rating by accident.
No, it's definitely not luck.
It is a highly engineered, intentional outcome. It happens through hyper-transparent job postings that psychologically filter out the wrong people, behavioral screening that prioritizes ingrained character over technical certifications, relentless vetting that cuts through the legal fear of reference checks, and rigorous choreographed onboarding.
Yeah.
Hiring isn't a back-office HR task you do when someone quits. It is the absolute frontline defense of your brand's reputation.
I strongly encourage you, as you go about your day, to look at your own team, your own vendors, or your own organization. Think about the people you bring into your inner circle. Are they a direct, intentional reflection of your core values?
That's a great question to ask.
Or, if you're being brutally honest with yourself, are you sometimes just filling a seat to ease the immediate workload and hoping for the best? Because hope is a terrible, catastrophic strategy for reputation management.
That is a harsh but incredibly necessary reality check. And it brings me to one final lingering question I want to leave you with today. We spent a lot of time talking about how the source text focuses heavily on screening candidates for the brutal, physical 130-degree heat of an Oklahoma attic.
Which is intense.
You undeniably have to be physically tough to survive that environment. But what about emotional heat?
Well, that's interesting.
Right. Imagine a scenario where a technician is trapped inside a sweltering house with a fiercely irate customer whose system just broke on a major holiday. The customer is screaming, the kids are crying, the house is physically boiling.
That is a pressure picker.
Does physical endurance correlate at all with emotional regulation? Or does a local business eventually need to design an entirely different kind of stress test, one that predicts not just how a hire handles the physical heat of the sun, but how they handle the scorching, unpredictable heat of human conflict?
That is definitely something to think about.
Something to mull over the next time you're building your own foundation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.